I do love your drawing. I'm going to have to jump into my meeting. So can I come join you in just a little bit?
Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Hey, Cora, nice to meet you.
You say bye.
Bye.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to welcome everyone to our bi-monthly general PTA meeting here in the month of March. We have special guest star Councilmember Charles Allen from Ward 6.
I'm just going to close the door. I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course. Who will take Q&A for a while with our Peabody, Watkins, and Stewart Hobson community. And then the big piece of business following Councilmember Allen is our budget discussion and some significant budget revisions that we need to talk through tonight and then vote on later this week. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Principal Berkowitz for a short introduction, followed by Q&A with Charles.
Okay, thank you, Lona, and thank you, Councilmember Allen, for joining us tonight. I'm learning how supportive you've been with our schools at Peabody and Watkins and Stewart Hobson over the last several years. You've been helping us with issues big and small, including the renovations of all of our 3 buildings, and I know that you're keeping a careful eye over the restoration work that's in progress right now at Peabody. For the community, Charles regularly attends our cluster auction and the Capitol Hill Classic, and Jordy and his wife have 2 young kids. We just met Cora and Everett as well. They live near Ludlow Taylor, where Cora attends school. And also Charles's chief of staff, Laura Marks, is a cluster parent. She has a child at Stewart Hobson. So obvious close connections to our local government officials, and thank you so much, Councilmember Allen, for providing time for some questions to our community this evening. Appreciate
Absolutely. It. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to see. Frankly, I see a lot of very familiar names, and I think Zach has the cluster image in the background where I think at least one of those years I got to celebrity bartend for a minute, and those were fun days, and one day we'll get back there. But I definitely want to thank everybody for taking the time out tonight and having me. You know, and when I come to a conversation like this, I want you all to know that I'm coming as your council member, so as a policymaker, but also as a DCPS dad. You met Cora. Everett is 4, so I have a 3rd grader and a pre-K 4, both at Ludlow Taylor. We live a block from Ludlow and a block from Stewart Hobson, just kind of smack in the middle. And a lot of the challenges that parents have reached out to me talking about over the course of this past year, those are challenges that I have faced as well, as my wife and I have struggled to work from home, figure out how we make school work, concerned about our kids, everything from social, emotional to academic, and all the things you feel. I want you to know that I feel them too, as not just your counselor, but as a parent and as a fellow neighbor. So I really appreciate how hard everyone is working to figure this out. And I know that everybody is. So I had a couple of questions that were shared with me in advance. So I thought I'd try to kind of talk about a couple of hot topics, big topics, but then really, Lona, kind of turn it back to you to help me just kind of moderate some questions, if that works for everybody. Is that the best way? Okay, got the thumbs up. All right. So broadly, so some of the things that got sent to me, first off, I want to let you know that a lot of them are going to be topics that I think we're going to be talking about over this week at the council. So tomorrow we have our oversight hearing with public witnesses. And actually I see a lot of Ward 6 names that are on that witness list. And then the following day, we will have the government witnesses for schools. So we're about to go through 2 days of public hearings where a lot of the questions and a lot of concerns that you've shared are going to be talked about. And I know I'll be taking your questions and feedback into those hearings as I do that. And some of them I'll have answers to tonight. Some of them I may not have answers to tonight, but the way in which you're helping me think about different issues and challenges will help inform the way that I'll be able to ask questions during the hearings over the next couple of days. Let me say one hot topic that I've heard from a lot of people is around term 4. I I have been advocating and pushing that I think we need to have all of our educators be able to have access to the vaccine before term 4. I think that that's important because we need to make sure that all of our educators are vaccinated, but also as we want to be able to keep increasing capacity, we've got to make sure that our educators are safe. And so getting access to the vaccine is one of the ways we do that. From what I'm seeing thus far, it does not look like the mayor's team is going to move in the direction of providing every educator that wants one a vaccine before term 4. That said, I don't know if that's the final decision. So we will continue to push on this, but I think that it's an important part of how we do this. It also doesn't appear that they are creating a strategy similar to before term 3, where they set up Dunbar as a specific site for vaccines. It looks like our educators would essentially be registering and competing in the pre-registration system the same way that everybody else is. And I'm not sure that's going to actually achieve what it is that what I think is necessary there. But we'll keep working on that. I'm also going to continue pressing what I think has been, frankly, a lack of creativity around how to use outdoor space. We're about to have a couple of 70-degree days this week, and it's going to really drive home for us the possibilities of our outdoor spaces. And that doesn't just have to be on our school grounds. I think we can be creative about our outdoor spaces in neighborhood parks, at our libraries, at our rec centers. I think we need to be much more bold and creative with that, and I'm just not seeing it. I've spent time, for example, with for folks that may be familiar with the Good Projects down in Southwest, which is a phenomenal effort with students, mostly from Jefferson Middle School, some from Amadon Bowen. Some of the students go to KIP, and they've really created a phenomenal support system by creating space that is not a school. It's actually a family resource center down in Greenleaf Public Housing, and they created it as a way to be able to be used. And there's a number of students there safely learning, having the type of supports that they need, and it's been successful. Little Lights has been doing the same thing over at Potomac Gardens. These models work. We kind of call them learning hubs. And what they also do is they really meet parents where they are, which I think is a really important part that I have not seen DCPS move as quickly as I want to, is to really find ways to meet parents, meet families, meet students where they are. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, to be able to reach what their needs are. And I think that's something that I'm going to keep pushing this week in hearings, and keep pushing with the relief dollars that are coming in momentarily, with all the things that are coming, the resources coming in. I think this is a real area where we can make a big difference, especially as we head into summer as well. One of the things that's within the federal relief are funds specifically for students in summer to expand programming. And I think this is going to be a really crucial part of this. I think I've heard from a lot of parents that are dissatisfied with the ways in which outdoor learning has been seen as a possibility and possibility incorporated. And I think that's something that we really got to look at. I'm also at the council co-chairing the council's special committee on recovery. And this is going to be a year-long effort to think through how we address a variety of issues. It's not a legislative committee, it's not a budget committee, but our job is, and I'm co-chairing this with Vince Gray, the Ward 7 council member, is to come up with a list of criteria, a list of ideas, recommendations over the course of this year, to then have the council help put those into action. I think about that because this recovery, once we get into May and June and vaccines are widely available, this crisis doesn't end. And the recovery is going to take not months, but it will take years. And we need to have our educational recovery plan be just as important as the small business recovery plan and the public transit recovery plan. Like, we're going to have to make sure these things are up front. And I think it's an opportunity for us to really think about that. I'm also, there's both my parent hat and my council member hat on. I think that we've got to work with DCPS to be stronger about what the fall is going to look like. I don't think any of us are asking for a crystal ball. I think that we understand there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of questions, but I know that when I talk with a lot of families, undoubtedly, there will be families that that make the choice there for their own safety, for their family's safety. It is not right yet to return into classroom. There likely is not a pediatric vaccine by the time school would start in the fall. They may have multi-generational household. They may have other issues. And so we need to plan for how do we meet those students' needs with a strong virtual capacity. But we also need, I think, to try to start giving direction about what the goal is. And I think that DCPS needs to say it in stronger terms about the fact that they want to be able to see that every student who wants to be in person can be in person in the fall. I think that's important for everybody to be able to think through what it looks like and how we make that work. So I will continue to kind of keep working with DCPS on that, but I think that's an important part of what we're going to keep working on. I also had a question around the Watkins Playground, so I'll give a quick update on that. We were able to put the funding into the capital budget. So for folks that follow the DC budget, it goes through, we budget our operations essentially 1 year at a time. We budget our capital 4 years at a time. So oftentimes capital planning will be a year or two out. So the Watkins Playground is in the FY22 capital budget, which means October 1st of 2021 is when those dollars become available. So that's going to be a really big opportunity for us, I think, to rethink that space. I remember that playground was added, a couple of years back. I think that anybody who plays on that playground would say that it's a little worse for the wear over the last several years. And so it's a really great opportunity for us to really upgrade that space because it's all, it serves certainly Watkins, but it is also a really wonderful community space where the neighborhood gathers in addition to the school community. So that to me is something that's going to be exciting. It's $1.5 million that we put to DPR to modernize the playground, the fields and those court spaces. And so again, that'll become available October 1st. What'll happen after that is they'll begin what they call their design construction process. They would meet with community, meet with stakeholders to kind of come up with what are some of the shared vision and shared ideas around that, and then be able to move that forward. And so I don't think you'll see construction until probably spring or summer of the next year. So that would be, and I should probably never say a deadline like this, but my hunch would be you'd likely see the construction in spring of, what would that be, 2022, summer of 2022. I would like it to happen on that time frame because I'd like it to be completed and done by the time the next school year begins, so that you don't have the playground under construction right next to the school building and get all that done at that time. So that would be my preferred timeline as to how we make that work. I don't want to just talk the whole time though. Lona, I know there may be some questions or some discussion. I would love to be able to hear from folks. I'll add one other item. I don't think it was a question that came in the ones you sent over, but one that I just want to make sure I bring up, and that is related to park testing.
Mm-hmm.
The things that at the council, a couple of colleagues, I asked them and they signed on with me to essentially have OSSI request a waiver from park this year. We're talking a lot about learning loss. We're talking about our students. I don't know about your kids. For mine, I think in the first 8 weeks of school, I think maybe half of them were 3-day weeks or less. The other were 4 days a week, because of course Wednesdays don't really count. When we're battling learning loss, we don't need to carve out time weeks and weeks to prepare for a park test, which really isn't about monitoring students' growth or learning loss. We need that academic time. And so I appreciate that OSSI, after we pushed it, and what I did is I had emergency legislation and was gonna have the council vote on it. OSSI quickly announced that they were gonna be seeking the waiver. They are looking to not have park this spring. They might look to do it in the fall, but that kind of is a little bit that's gonna come from Department of Education, federal guidance as to what we do with that. But I think that's just incredibly important that we realize this is not the spring to be doing park. And in addition to all the other reasons, how in the world are you going to standardize a test when half the students are taking it on the dining room table and half the students are in their classroom? Like, it's just, it was going to have an asterisk next to it anyway. It's just best not to do park this spring. And so I was really glad that we put a little pressure legislatively, but we were able to get that done. So I think that that's something that's important. And there may be some questions about that. Just wanted to share that. But Lona, why don't does that work for you? I'll just turn it back to you if you want to help.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very
much. I hope I
much.
hit some of the hot topics.
You did. And I think one of the things about the playground too is that I'm not sure our community realizes that we are actually like redesigning it too. So it's not just a, restoration of the playground. There'll be a real design and thought process put into it. So the community will have input, and that'll be super important, especially for our walk-in students. So we had a couple pre-submitted ones. And I think one, and I just saw a question in the chat, Charles, was about the class sizes and whether or not an increased class size is going to be reviewed by the city as we prepare for term 4, which could give communities more in-person learning opportunities. Have you heard anything from your counterparts about increasing class sizes?
And let me just make sure I clarify so I understand the question, because I've had some people ask me, for example, will DOH revisit the 6-foot distancing requirement? Is that, okay, I see heads nodding, so that's what. I will say that it's something that DOH is aware of as a concern. I can't speak for DOH to say if they've made a change on that. Council doesn't determine, is it 6 feet, is it 3 feet? That's going to be something the Department of Health is going to give their guidance on, and they're going to take their cues significantly from CDC guidance. We have brought it up with DOH, so they are aware that that's something to think about. I think that things are moving relatively quickly in terms of different data and metrics that are coming out. So I would just say at this point, it's on DOH's radar. It would be micromanaging for the council to be passing laws about saying how many feet you do to social distance. That's why we have our public health professionals, but we are bringing that issue up and raising that as, for their awareness, and they absolutely are aware of it. I couldn't tell you though, for example, if they have a special date or something like that where they give an update on that.
Okay. We had one more pre-submitted question and then we'll turn to the chat, but I want to cover the people that sent in questions early. My oldest child is thriving in person learning at Maury, but my younger child at Peabody does not have a spot. Being back at school has been night and day for my oldest child's emotional health and well-being, and we are grateful for the administration and teachers for making this possible. You did already dig into this a little bit, but are there additional plans that the district has to expand IPL in term 4 to help meet the unmet needs of in-person learning?
If I understand the question correctly, we're talking about in what ways are we expanding our social emotional supports?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's this parent is, very concerned about their child's specific social emotional support. But also I think that this question also speaks to just how incredibly different each school it can be, and how within that school, how different each grade can be. So yeah, just expanding in person overall for those families that want to be back into their buildings.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's going to be continuing to think about how we are utilizing our space, right? So I've talked with some school communities. And the thing is, this is true at a lot of our school buildings, that there's just not a whole lot of space to go. So if the classrooms have to be essentially half the size, there's just not the physical space to be able to go and add more seats, even if there's demand for that. That kind of gets back for me about how do we creatively use our outdoor space, especially with warmer weather. I think it's not the exact, but I'll give an example. I think that the mayor's team has done a really good job, for example, with some of our restaurants, of helping pay for the tents and the heaters and the things that help them be able to have outdoor dining, right? And those were lifelines to those restaurants. They help keep people employed, help keep those businesses afloat. And by and large, a lot of those restaurants, we gave grants and support to be able to get those tents up and all that. So I think that's an example to me of where the mayor's team moved aggressively and creatively to come up with those ideas. I don't believe we've actually thought as creatively and aggressively when it comes to our outdoor classroom space. And we also have to see space in a different way. It's not just going to be if you've got a baseball diamond outside your school. We've got to think about, how do you use the garden? How to use the park across the street? It's actually not a DCPS field, but is maybe DPR, or maybe even it's National, Federal Park Service. how do we use all of these spaces in a way that start to expand capacity? That to me is where we have an opportunity to think creatively. We've got a spring and a summer, at least, where we should be working aggressively on those spaces, where the weather will be much more conducive to that. And then even in the fall, I think, I don't know about you, but I have found my children are much more hardy this winter outdoors than ever before, partly because we're all just forced into it. I've been surprised that I can even convince them to eat outside with a jacket on. So, I think that we're learning to be a little bit more resilient when it comes to that outdoor space and be more creative, and we need to meet that space. And that will be one of the ways that I think we can expand that capacity. And we got to think creatively. Peabody, we've got Stanton Park across the street. Are there ways that we can think about that, even though it's not DC, obviously, it's National Park Service, but are there ways we can create partnerships to utilize space in a better way? Is kind of where I think we should keep pushing.
Well, I can tell you that just from listening to our community and recent LSAT discussions, we are fully on board with creative ideas and listening to what other schools are doing that might be working in that space. We are open to every creative outdoor learning idea there might be. So, okay, we're going to turn to the chat, and I just want to be respectful of your time. We have two questions from Sarah Aleem. Does the Biden administration providing vaccines for teachers at Walgreens, CVS, et cetera, impact term 4 and increase capacity? Also, the CDC guidance that came out today, people having been vaccinated and what they can do, does that impact term 4?
Got it. So I actually had someone send me some information while we actually started this call from the mayor's team trying to talk about what they are doing for teachers. So I want to try to make sure I got this correct in terms of term 4. So one of the things that they're doing is they are reaching out to all DCPS staff who want to be vaccinated, and they're making apparently a concerted effort to work on the pre-registration portal on Wednesday. Then what they're going to be doing is within that, identifying as people mark, their employer or employment, prioritizing school and childcare staff who sign up on the registration. And then they're going to prioritize that for the available appointments. So they believe that they'll be able to meet the demand for term 4. So that's at least what I'm kind of hearing back. People I think are listening to the conversation tonight at the meeting. So that's at least some of the feedback that I've gotten around that element. So as it relates to like a Walgreens, for example, I don't know if I could tell you if that's the ways in which they're setting it up at a specific store or, a drugstore. The way in which the pre-registration site is going to work is as the registrations come in, they're then going to have staff that call out and essentially call, text, and email to the people that hit that list and then schedule the appointment. And the schedule will be at a variety of sites where we're giving out vaccination doses. The other thing I've sometimes gotten asked around vaccination sites, like why aren't we doing mass vaccination sites like some other cities are doing? That's actually just a dose issue. We have the ability, for example, to turn Nats Ballpark or the convention center into mass vaccination sites. The problem is we don't have enough doses from the federal side to actually make that work yet. So each week we're getting an increase. So every week it keeps going up, which is great. The Johnson & Johnson approved vaccine helps bring in more as well as being one dose. So it's a lot easier than having to move around with freezers and everything else and not have to deal with 2 doses. So our capacity keeps increasing, but we still aren't at the number and capacity of doses to be able to get all the demand, obviously, and to kind of make those mass vaccination sites work. If the question was specific to what's the Biden administration doing with specific pharmacies, I just don't know that answer, but could try to find out for you.
Okay. Jess Panet asks, is impact on the council's radar right now? This has been a hard year for all of us, teachers especially. And it seems like with all of the variations of the teaching models, this is a bad time to proceed with impact reviews for teachers. I recently learned they're continuing. If so, I would like to see them suspended this spring.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. It is on our radar, kind of along the same lines with park testing. This is just a really tough year to think about testing as well as how you hold that as an evaluative tool. We looked at, for example, we shouldn't be using park, for example, with student, retention or with teachers, those tests are just going to have a giant asterisk next to them anyway. So I think we need to be very careful about them and how they're used. And I think it's absolutely on our radar.
Mhm.
Again, that's, the council is a voice in that decision making. We obviously have the mayor's side that makes a lot of those decisions too.
Mhm. Great. Let's see, Megan Rhodes and Brooke Jameson, one topic for term 4. Is there any discussion of adding instructional time on Wednesdays?
I have not heard it. My Wednesdays probably look a lot like yours too. I would welcome that, but I have not heard discussions about that on Wednesdays.
Let's see, Chaz Everly asks, could your office facilitate communication between Ward 6 schools about instruction models and best practices? We were surprised to learn that our leadership was not aware of plans at neighboring elementary schools.
Just to make sure I understand, I think what Chaz is talking about is in terms of like having schools talk to schools, like school leaders be able to share best practices and talk to each other.
Yes.
I'm happy to try to do that. I know sometimes we have our instructional superintendents and others that are kind of supposed to be helping make those types of connections. If that's not happening, happy to make sure. I know that a lot of our school leaders lean on other school leaders, both for emotional support sometimes, just kind of like sharing same experiences as well as learning from each other. If we feel like there's a breakdown taking place somewhere, I'm happy to try to help make those connections. I know most of our principals by name. Laura Marks on my team. Between the two of us, we know, I think, every single principal in any school in Ward 6. And if we can make the connections, we'll absolutely help do that.
Mm-hmm. The other thing to remember is that we've got the W6 PSPO meeting that happens every third Tuesday, which in theory brings—
It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, Lona?
It really does. But that's also another opportunity we could push Suzanne and her team to make that a topic for this March or this month. It is March.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We'll just do a couple more, and then we can always send you follow-up questions via email. Let's see. Kathy asks, how much input does the council have into the use of federal education funds coming into DC? There seems to be very little input from people on the ground about how this money is going to be used.
Great question. We do have input. Ultimately, the council passes a budget. And so we've actually been talking about this with the mayor and the city administrator and with the chair of the council, that we have to be able to see what the spending plan is. And then ultimately we have to approve that as well. Of course, I would rather us actually have kind of constructive conversations about forming that budget rather than kind of saying, well, here's what I'm going to do with it. And then it sets off a fight. So I know that as we really try to figure out exactly how many dollars are coming in and in which fiscal year they have to be spent in, like there's some of the federal dollars coming in, we actually have 4 years to spend. Some of the federal dollars coming in are for the fiscal year that we're currently in. Some of the dollars coming in are for the fiscal year we're going to be starting next fall. So first we have to figure out which dollar goes into which bucket and then help figure out what we're going to do with them. But we're going to have to be able to know that. We're going to do a separate hearing specifically on the federal dollars coming in. And I believe the date on that is on May 10th. And that's going to be on the expected federal stimulus funds in the budget. So that'll be all of the dollars, but May 10th is the date that we're looking to do that.
Great. Sounds good. And let's see, last question that's gotten a couple of folks supportive. How are you feeling about Robert White's bill to rethink mayoral control of DCPS?
The bill, so Councilor White never actually talked to me about it, so I was just reading about it. So as I understand the bill, it was he was trying to create a special committee at the council to evaluate, but then not actually put forward any recommendations. I'm not really sure, or I was never clear as to what it was going to accomplish necessarily. So if the question is specific to like the legislation that he was putting forward, which was it was a one-person committee that he was chairing. He never called me. I never understood all the details about what he was proposing to do, but it was going to essentially be a special committee. If the question is, well, should we be thinking about governance? To me, the answer is yes. I think that OSSI, for example, needs to be independent. I've co-introduced legislation around that we should have the Office of State Superintendent be an independent entity. I think that would be better than having the deputy mayor for education, the superintendent of the system, and the chancellor for the schools all work for the same person. We have created this kind of three-headed entity where it's hard to figure out who's accountable to whom, who's in charge of what. And so I think that that is a absolutely fair question that we need to dig into, and to try to help evaluate what is the right model. What have we learned, and what parts do we keep? What parts might need to change? For me, the one thing I feel very comfortable saying right off the bat is I think that OSSI needs to be independent. And I think that's something that several of us on the council agree would be a right step to take.
Sounds good. We do have a couple of other questions, but I think I'm going to ask Zach to help me capture them. And we will send those to you and Laura on email if that's okay to answer when you have a chance later this week or next week.
We would be happy to, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for coming tonight and spending part of your Monday night with us. On behalf of Peabody Watkins and Stuart Hobson, thanks for all that you do to make our schools a better place and supporting our teachers and our families. So thanks to you and Jordy, and we will see you soon.
I hope so. I hope to see everybody again soon. I can't wait to run the classic again soon. I got to start running and getting back into some running shape, but I look forward to seeing everybody again very soon, and certainly look forward to, I know I get to see everybody sometimes in the neighborhood or just the parks and playgrounds and that too. So it's always great to see everybody in the neighborhood. So thanks everybody. Take care. Have a good night and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sounds good. We are now going to walk through our agenda for the evening. And it was at the top of the chat. So if anybody wants to go ahead and follow along, we're going to turn to auction updates. As many of you know, we've got our auction, gosh, it's about 6 weeks away at this point. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna Anderson for a quick recap and tell us what's buzzing.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So as Lona just said, the date for the virtual auction is April 23rd. So please keep that in your mind. You're also going to see it in your inbox more frequently in the next couple of weeks. We are this year, however, going to open up the online auction a little bit earlier. We're going to open it up on April 9th. The goal is bidding. Give you a couple of Friday cocktails to bid on some items. In terms of where we are, we have had some phenomenal volunteers step up, but we could use some more. So please do reach out to me or to Christy if you have any time to give. We do have a theme. It's resilient in red. We wanted to recognize this challenging year. And as I said, the last time I was on this call updating, we really are hoping that this event will feel like a celebration for all of us. Celebrate the community, celebrate the resilience. In terms of what the event will look like, we're still nailing down the details, but we will have music, we will have special guests, we will have trivia. Tickets will, of course, be free, but we are working with local restaurants right now to identify some different dinner and beverage packages that will be available for purchase that you can enjoy during the event. I think the other thing I wanted to just mention or highlight is that we had heard back from several people, and we also felt that it was incredibly important we be clear about the fundraising goals. Asking people to donate time, resources right now, it made a lot of sense to us that people were asking us to be very clear about the why. So you're going to see in the messaging that will go out tomorrow, which is going to launch our more sort of consistent communication plan in the build up to the auction, that we have listed some specific fundraising needs that the schools have identified, including a somewhat general need to be able to fund programs that will target learning loss, given the unprecedented academic year that our kids are going through right now. In addition to that, we are going to be highlighting locally owned, Black owned, and cluster owned businesses in our communications. We're going to be asking those of you who are able to buy goods and services from these businesses and donate them to the auction. We also want to take advantage of having our communications be a chance to highlight the many businesses there are that we all should be aware of and supporting in our community. And we also plan to highlight that the PTA has a tradition of donating funds to another DCPS school in recognition that not all schools within our greater DCPS community have access to the same PTA fundraising capacity as ours. All of those we felt were important things to let everybody know as we launch this effort. So all of this will be in the email that we're going to send out tomorrow. I'm very happy to take questions now. I'm also happy to set up additional time to speak with anyone who's interested in learning more about the auction, the goals, and definitely if you're interested in volunteering. That is my update.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jenna. And as Jenna mentioned, tomorrow is really the beginning of the auction push, both on our listserv and social media. We would love to have more people involved to help out. So if you're interested, Zach just popped the cluster auction chair email in the chat, and we'll be sure to have that on all of our materials moving forward. So thank you, Jenna. Now we are going to turn to our budget update and our overall campus budget review. As many of you know, this has been a challenging year in terms of fundraising dollars across many nonprofits, PTAs, PTOs in the city. And the PTA Executive Committee took a long and hard look at our budget, and we've made the decision to, the necessary decision to cut campus spending at our 3 campuses across the board. That's the not great news. The good news is that because we are in a pandemic, we actually had not spent that much money. So the programs that were cut were basically ones that were not going to be used at all this year, but ones that we had allocated for in case things had changed. So Jess Pannett, our co-treasurer, is going to talk us through the 3 campus budgets. She's got an overall slide and then campus budgets in detail. We've got members from our executive committees on the call as well, and we will be putting all of this in the notes for folks to look at in detail. And then starting tomorrow, we will hold a 1-week vote process for all 3 campus budgets so that the community has input and can formally vote to approve the new budgets for the remainder of the school year. So Jess, want to walk us through, please?
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hope everybody can see. Okay, so we thought this was a good opportunity to just go back to basics a little bit and just do an overview, a quick overview of our budget process, because we basically did this all over again in a sense. So I wanted to go ahead and review this. So the way we do this at the cluster, because we have 3 schools and we have our PTA and we have the executive committees, I'm going to explain how everything works together. So the PTA board every year at budget season time, it basically estimates what the income is going to be from the fundraisers for the school year, because a lot of people don't know this, but we don't use a budget based on previous year's earnings. We use a budget based on projected earnings. So we typically go back and look at the previous 3 years and do an average and see where we are. Well, we're in pandemic world, so things are a little different, but anyway, that's what we usually do. We come up with an estimate, and then we put together the PTA operating budget bottom portion, which is usually things like campus-wide initiatives like teacher appreciation and what else? Family engagement and communications and things like that, things that touch everybody at every campus. And then we have the campus budget totals. And what we do to set those is we come up with well, we didn't come up with the formula. The formula is there already, but we use the formula and we do it based on the projected enrollment that comes out in, gosh, Lona, I'm going to mess that up, February, March, something like that. Okay, comes out in February. We use the projected enrollment. We do a per student calculation. We get that big number, and then we pass it over to the campus executive committees. Now they include teacher reps and parent reps, and those reps work with the administration and with the community. They do solicit input from the community. They will usually let you know that they're working on the budgets and they want to hear from you, and that's your chance to speak up. So they do that, and then they put together a spending plan. And then they present it to the community, and the community can discuss it at the meeting. There are usually opportunities to amend things slightly. I know that happened with Peabody in the fall. We changed the food prints number, so it can be done, and it has been done. And then you vote up or down on each of the budgets. And so just like how we did it in the fall, we are going to be doing this again. So what I've done here is I have the budget here for you. This is a proposed revised budget, but what we have is the numbers that have strike throughs were the old numbers. I just wanted everybody to be able to see where we are and where we were. So just go over it again. The starting surplus is the same. We had 57,000 not spent last year. That rolled over. Then I'm going to skip down to the fundraising income. We had been hoping to earn about 130,000. But as you all know, the house tour didn't happen. The real classic is not happening. We're hoping for a virtual classic, but we just don't know at this point. And the auction is not expected to earn as much as it has in past years. And our membership and donations are about where they have been in past years, maybe a little lower. So we had to go back and try to see what was going to work for the campuses. So we reached out to the committees. We asked them to pull together their numbers of what they actually need this year and what they've already spent, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't setting a budget that was beneath what they've already spent. And we also wanted it to be an equitable cut. We did not want to be making different level cuts at different campuses. So we came up with these numbers. It's a 30% cut at each campus. And you can see Peabody goes from 27,625 to 19,335. Watkins goes from 57,000 to 39,900. Stewart Hobson goes from 64,125 to 44,888. And then beneath that, all the other numbers beneath that, meeting support, teacher appreciation, principal stipends, marketing, PTA operations, discretionary, well, dues doesn't count because we can't change that one, but everything else had a 51% cut. So we came down a lot on the campus-wide initiatives, but we kept the campus budgets a little more robust. And down here, it just explains a little bit about how we did that, but it says here, 30% at the campus, 51% cut on the rest of the budget. And that comes to basically $87 per student in funding, just over. It's a little higher than 87. And you can see there the breakdown based on the number of students. And down here, just for everybody to see, is the current expenses. So if I were to go back up, you would see Peabody is still under their budget, Watkins is still under it, Stewart Hobson is still under it. So we're okay, everything's good. It's just, we wanted to be very careful about how we proceeded with the rest of the year. So this is making it clear for everybody. All right, and then I will go into
Jess,
Peabody.
do you want to pause and see if
Sure.
anyone has any? You and I have looked at this so many times.
I
feel
know,
like
you're right.
we could read it in our sleep, but I know a lot of people are seeing this for the first time. And again, this will all be posted in Katie's notes in the next day or so. So folks will have time to look at this and dig into this as they are voting online on the campus budgets. So,
now, does anyone have any questions? I can't actually see anybody right now.
yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. It's probably the easiest. If folks have questions, just because Jess is screen sharing. If you've got, here, I'll just put, if you've got budget questions, please stick them in the chat. Why don't we go ahead and turn to Peabody, and I'll just request questions in the chat.
Yeah, just stop me. Okay, all right, so Peabody really didn't change much at all, actually, which is really good. The food prints number was the same, student supply bags was the same. They did reduce the grant funding, but that was actually a decision that predated this whole process. They weren't going to use it anyway, so they decided to just proceed without doing that. So that the money that would have been there dropped down to this unallocated amount down here. And then Kindred, again, was already spent. So Peabody is in good shape, but does anybody have any questions about Peabody? Lona, just let me know.
I don't see anything about general or Peabody, so.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so then Watkins, sorry, we're trying to get through this because we know it's a long night.
Sorry, this is Miss Taylor. I have a question about Peabody budget
Sure.
and about food prints. Has that money already been spent? And if so, what contract, like what's all under the contract? Basically, I have not seen food prints happen at all this year. So I'm just wondering where is the $12,000 going?
Yes, we paid for food prints. This was the contract that we signed with them back in September, based on, a virtual platform. We have not signed anything for next school year. In fact, we just started discussions with them. They are going to come to us with a proposed plan for Peabody and Watkins in the next week or so. I know they did an initial outreach to our administrators. Happy to flag for them that your specific classroom or grade has not seen food prints. I think that's really important for them to know. And if you'd like to be a part of the food prints discussion, we'd be more than welcome to have you, because we'd love to get a teacher at the table too, so they can understand where the gaps are.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Taylor.
Yep.
This is Miss Slattery. I just want to second what Miss Taylor was saying. I don't think it's just pre-K 3 at Peabody who hasn't seen food prints yet. And I do know that Miss Rebecca from Food Prints has been working closely with Miss Bloom at Peabody. So
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Peabody before I move to Watkins? No, okay. All right, so Watkins, also there weren't huge changes. So again, food prints already spent, Kindred already spent. Teacher stipends, there's actually no change here, even though we've gone to zero in the operating. Teacher stipends are still available, $100 per teacher. We're just taking it from a different account. We're gonna take it restricted. That way that frees up that money in case the campus needs it. I know there's been a lot of discussions about virtual learning and trying to make improvements, and who knows, that money might be well spent there. So Brainy Camp, again, already spent. Instructional bags already spent. Community support is there. We need to let the social workers know. Grants, they did reduce the grants, but the cycle has been closed, so they're not going to. And Teacher Sunshine Fund is still there, and so unallocated, they end up with 11,610 remaining to, they could try to spend it on some of the virtual learning gaps, or if there's in-person needs, the executive committees are working with the administration. So that's it for Watkins. Any questions about Watkins?
Yeah, there's the Kathy's pointing out too, there's been a lack of food prints in both pre-K 4 and Watkins, third grade.
Interesting. I wonder if it's a case by case, because my daughter's had either 3 or 4 food prints classes, and while they're not anything, I mean, we talked about this, they're not anything like as great as they were in person. It seems strange that it's hit or miss. It's just, we'll have to talk to them about that.
Yeah. The other thing too, before we turn to Stuart Hobson, is that Pam, Nell, and Takesha have finalized the requests that have come in for the winter grants. I'm sorry, Pam might be on. I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead of you. It's not on gallery anymore. But those grants, I think there are 4 that have been submitted, will be included in the campus voting process that will be online over the next week. So parents will have a chance to approve the grants that have come in over the winter. And again, I think there were 4 total.
Okay, we ready for Stuart Hobson? There's actually not that much difference in overall spending at Stuart Hobson from what I remember, Lynn. I think we ended up with similar spending, but we'll just quickly review. Technology came way down because there just wasn't a need for it. So the campus is spending money on the newsletter, but that's about it. Reading and math intervention, there's just not really a need for it from what we understand, but we're going to keep a little bit there in case something comes up. We just wanted to give a little bit of a cushion to a couple of these, to the CES and life skills support as well, just giving a cushion in case there's a need. Stuart Hobson reads 1 book, that's already spent. Family social events is going to be used in the spring. Then we have theater, dance, choir, band, and orchestra. They've both been reduced. Staff appreciation has already basically been spent. So we are just capping that one, or the committee's capping that one where it is. 8th grade celebrations, they're going to try to continue to do that, honor that. Academic supplies and office supplies, just not needed. Again, just another one that, because the kids aren't in person, that would usually be for students, it's not needed. Landscaping, gardening, again, that's like the last thing on everybody's minds right now, I think, is landscaping and gardening, so it's not needed. Student incentives and rewards was spent and actually a little over budget. And then catering and food was added. This is a new line. This was not in the original operating budget, so we're, as part of the vote, we're asking the community to approve this. Snacks for kids to school on Wednesdays. Again, field trips not needed. Beginning of the year grants were done, but they didn't use the full amount. Same thing with fall grants. So we capped them at exactly where they spent those amounts, and then that money rolls back into the unallocated. And then spring grants is going to be 3,000 to try to keep it matching with those other 2 grant cycles. And then the community fund is also still there. So the social workers, again, should know that that's still there. Teacher Appreciation Week has been added. So that's another line that we're hoping to get everybody's approval on. And then, as you can see, unallocated is almost the same, a little higher, because of some of those cuts that were up higher. So out of unallocated, they had already spent 3,300, but they've got about 17 to work with. So pretty healthy in case there's needs, again, in the virtual space or in the in-person space, although I think at this point, virtual is probably the greater need. But that's it. So if anybody has any questions about any of those, please ask. Otherwise, we'll be sending them around, as Lona said, for a vote.
Thank you very much, Jess. A big thank you to you and Mina. This has taken many hours to put together and do it in an equitable way, and really working closely with our executive committees, especially Amy Pressler, Pam Dickerson, and Kat Baptiste. So a huge shout out to those parents for really sort of reining things in, but more, doing this across the board in an equitable process. So hopefully everybody feels like the presentation has been clear, and again, we'll include everything in the notes. Okay, I think nothing in the chat in terms of questions on the budget. So we just have a few other announcements left, and then we'll let everyone continue on with their Monday nights. A couple of announcements for all 3 campuses. Starting this Thursday for our virtual learners only, our Peabody and Watkins students are invited to Thursday field trips. The PTA has been working very closely with Flex, and we are partnering with Stanford Science Center. They're a science center based up in Connecticut. And virtual learners will be invited to 30-minute live field trips with a science instructor from 11:30 to 12. This will be on Zoom. We'll send those links around. We'll make sure that your teachers have those links, but hopefully your kiddos will have a chance to have lunch during their break and watch a science lesson on Thursdays, March 11th, March 18th, and March 25th. And then depending on how the community feels about those, we'll plan to do hopefully another series of those in April. We are working on extracurricular activities at Stuart Hobson, a running club, a bike club, and we have a small group of parents that are doing brainstorming about social and outdoor activities that our middle schoolers can do safely at the end of term 3 and as we head into term 4 outside. If anyone would like to join that Stuart Hobson brainstorming session, please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone on the Stuart Hobson Executive Committee. They'll know how to find a few of the parents that are working on this. Principal Frazier is fully supportive of good ideas to get our middle schoolers socializing safely as we head into the spring. We've got our next school improvement team meeting for Peabody on March 24th at 4 o'clock. This is our second meeting that we're having with DCPS and with the people that are restoring the building. That is on Zoom, or no, that's on Microsoft Teams, and we'll put that link on the calendar and on the listserv for anyone who would like to join that community meeting on March 24th. And then later this week, we are announcing a partnership which we're working on with Flex Tutors. This will be for a reduced tutoring opportunity, one-on-one sessions for all of our cluster families at Peabody, Watkins, and Stewart-Hobson. We're just finalizing the details with Flex. They are putting the finishing touches on an easy website for parents to register for tutoring in the spring. So we'll have that out on the listserv, and we'll put it on the website, the cluster website as well. And then as a reminder, as we head into the spring, it is time to start our PTA recruitment. We are excited about new members who would like to join the board, parents who want to be more involved. We're looking for a diverse group of parents from all 3 of our campuses to join the board next year. Early this morning, the board approved, according to our bylaws, we need 3 representatives from the board who are transitioning off to join the nominating committee. And so we've got Zach Lowe for Peabody, Catherine Davis for Stewart-Hobson, and Katie Beret for Watkins. We've had a couple of folks who've stepped forward and asked to also join that nominating committee. If you are interested in joining the nominating committee, please reach out to one of the 3 folks I just mentioned. And we're also going to start hitting the listserv to recruit parents to join the board this year. And then finally, I think we'll close on a fun thing. Zach's going to give us a preview of Thursday night, one of our cluster community nights, which we hope to see everyone there. So I will let Zach close out the meeting, but please keep an eye out on the listservs for all of the budget votes this upcoming week. And over to Zach.
Thank you, Lona. Yes, Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, we're going to have some fun. We have a Lego artist who's going to join us and provide a demonstration. His name is Adam Ward. He's a Los Angeles-based artist working primarily with Legos. He does big Lego installations for like corporate headquarters, but he also does fun, engaging events. And he just wrote a book for that any Lego lover would find interesting. So this is an event for the entire family, whether pre-K 3 or 8th grade, you'll probably get a lot out of this. Adam's going to show us around his home studio. So if you want to see what it's like to live with, thousands and thousands of Legos, he's going to do a live demonstration, offering kind of tips and tricks. And you'll be amazed at some of the things you can do with the Legos. You don't have to buy the fancy set. He can show you some cool things to do with what you probably have in your home. So the free event, 7 o'clock on Thursday. I'm going to drop in the chat one of his videos so you can see a little bit more about him. And then I'm also going to drop in some information on our website about the event itself, open for the cluster community and others. So the link to join is at that link on our website. We'll be sharing more information on the listserv. But Thursday, 7 o'clock, let's have some fun.
And Zach, that's a Zoom link for Thursday?
It is a Zoom link.
On the website. Okay, awesome. And it's from 7 to 8. So if you want to plan your dinner around it and watch a crazy Lego guy, there you go.
Who among us doesn't want to do what you just said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who among us, right? But the good thing is that he's Peabody Watkins, and hopefully he can capture, some of our middle schoolers too. So he's a really charismatic personality. I encourage you all to watch the video to get excited about Adam. So unless anyone has any other questions or comments, we're going to close out our meeting, and we hope to see all of our cluster families on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, sorry, it's Miss Taylor. I hate to be the one to extend this meeting yet even longer. But I just added a comment, and I believe I brought it up in the last PTA meeting when about the flex
Mhm.
tutoring and was wondering if there's any opportunities we could find a way to creatively create some type of scholarship for students who might not be able to afford the tutoring services. I'm happy to, I don't know who's in charge of like that flex initiative, but I'm happy to just reach out to them instead of making this like a full PTA
That's okay.
conversation.
That's okay. The executive team's been working with Flex. So Ms. Taylor, I'm happy to talk to you tomorrow. We did look into scholarships for the Flex tutoring. Given the PTA's financial situation right now, it would be tough. But we have been talking to the schools, specifically Watkins and Stewart Hobson, and there are some tutoring, not some, there are tutoring opportunities there for scholarship recipients. So happy to talk to you more offline and share that information.
Thanks so much.
Of course. Sounds good. And thank you to our ASL interpreters tonight, Ms. Moore and Ms. Lee. Thank you for being with us. Good night, everyone.